Hey guys, MtgDecksForFun here with another deck tech. This one is for one of my favorite decks. So, I used to have Stark of Wrath as the commander for this deck, and it was mono red. But it was a lot of fun, but it didn't, I don't know, it wasn't as consistent as this deck is. Now, don't get me wrong, it was probably one of my favorite decks, and it was pretty. Sorry, it was really fun, and it's funny because my name is Stark, and it made sense. So, anyways, this is my Breya Etherium Shaper EDH deck. So Breya is a toolbox commander. She does so many things. It's actually crazy how much stuff she does. So when she comes in, she's a 4/4 for 4. She's red, black, blue, and white. And when she comes into play, you get two 1/1 blue Thopter artifact creature tokens with flying. You can pay 2, sacrifice 2 artifacts, and choose one. You can either have her deal 3 damage to target player, give target creature -4/-4 until end of turn, or you can gain 5 life. So the life isn't always that useful. It's probably the most useless out of all of them. But red is the burn, black is the negative, white is the life gain. You had to give something for white. I think you could have done better. But what are you going to do? So obviously this is an artifact deck. But we have, I think it's 4 islands, 4 swamps, 4 plains, and I think it's only 3 mountains because red is definitely the least powerful color in this deck. It's still, it's still good, don't get me wrong, but it's not that strong. So we have, obviously, Command Tower, Reflecting Pool, Exotic Orchard. Again, on the fence about that card, but I don't have anything to replace it with right now, so it'll stay. Tainted Field, and then Prairie Stream, Smoldering Marsh, Sunken Hollow, Glacial Fortress, Dragon Skull Summit, Drowned Catacombs, Isolated Chapel, and then for Shocklands we have Watery Grave, Godless Shrine, Sacred Foundry, Hollowed Fountain, Blood Crypt. I think I'm missing like two Shocklands for this deck. I'm not sure. I can't remember. But anyways, and then for colorless lands in a 4-color deck. Yes, we have Buried Ruin, return an artifact from my graveyard to my hand. Darksteel Citadel because it's an artifact and I can sacrifice it. Inventor's Fair. So Inventor's Fair says if you control 3 or more artifacts, you gain 1 life at the beginning of your upkeep. You can add a colorless mana to your mana pool, but you can pay 4, sack it, search your library for an artifact card, reveal it, put it into your hand, then shuffle your library, and you can activate it only if you control 3 or more artifacts. So when you play Breya, you automatically have 3 artifacts. So now we get into the Planeswalkers. Kea is really good in this deck. Obviously, her other abilities are not that great, but you exile her and up to 1 target creature, return them to the battlefield at the owner's next upkeep. And then you gain 2 life. So, you bounce her and you bounce Breya, and you get 2 more Thopters, and you just keep doing that every turn. And also, that makes Breya protected when it's not your turn. Venser the Sojourner, again, exile a permanent, put it back into play. You're ready because it's an artifact deck, and discarding and drawing is really good. And then we get into the creatures. So Contraband, Kingpin, whenever an artifact enters the battlefield under my control, I can scry 1. So Breya comes into play. That's 3 scries. Hand a Ship's Navigator to get back my artifacts. Shroom to get back my artifacts. Filigree Angel to gain me a ton of life, and then blink it with Kea or blink it with Venser. I also, an oversight, I need the Eldrazi guy that bounces things for 3 mana. Then we have me a Retriever. Return artifact from my graveyard to hand when it dies, so you can sack it to Breya. Value Town. Burnish Heart to ramp. Scrap Trawler. Whenever Scrap Trawler or another artifact you control is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return to your hand an artifact card in your graveyard with lesser converted mana cost. Doesn't seem like a lot, but it gets pretty good. Shimmermere, I can cast artifact spells as though they had flash. Solemn Simulacrum to ramp us out. Arcbound Reclaimer lets me. He comes into play with 2 1/1 counters, and when I can remove a 1/1 counter to put an artifact card from my graveyard on top of my library. Soul of New Phyrexia. This goes good with Navinro's Disc because it lets me destroy everything except for my stuff. Mere Battlesphere to make artifacts to sack to Breya. Soulabed, Goblin Tinkerer, sack an artifact to make an artifact indestructible. Seems pretty good with the tokens. I can make Breya indestructible. Disciple of the Vault. Now, this is an infinite combo with Shroom. I don't run it, or at least I don't think I do. If I do, I've never used it before, and I don't understand how the combo works. But I'm pretty sure I don't have it. Oh, sorry. Whenever an artifact is put into the graveyard from play, you may have target opponent lose a life. So it's not just when my stuff goes into the graveyard, it's when other people's stuff goes into. And then Marionette Master is ridiculous. So comes into play, you put the counters on it because you don't need the tokens. And then whenever an artifact you control dies, or is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to Marionette Master's power. So every time a Thopter dies, hits the graveyard, exiles. I believe is how it works. Correct me if I'm wrong. Even if that's not how it works. You sack artifacts to Breya, they hit the graveyard, they lose 4 life. And then you bring them back, and you sack them again, lose 4 life. Padim, Console of Innovation, excuse me. So, artifact creatures you control, or artifacts you control have hexproof. At the beginning of your upkeep, if you control the artifact with the highest converted mana cost or is tied for the highest converted mana cost, you draw a card. So, obviously, in Commander, everybody's going to have artifacts. But I have some pretty high cost artifacts in here, so most of the time I'll be the one drawing cards. Clever Impersonator. Copy anything on the battlefield, basically. Sun Titan to get back most of my artifacts. And then we have the removal package. We have Black Sun Zenith, obviously, to get rid of Indestructible. Wrath of God, destroy all creatures that can't be regenerated. Hollow Burial puts them on the bottom. Phyrexian Rebirth makes an artifact when it blows up the world, so that's good. Then we have targeted removal. We have Unmake, exile a creature. Anguish Unmaking, exile a permanent, lose 3 life. Mortify, destroy a creature or enchantment. Exile target non-land permanent, utter end. Scour from existence, just exile a permanent. Here's Downfall. This is a proxy my friend made for me. It's really cool. It also kind of brings the feels in because of what happened, obviously. But destroy a target creature or planeswalker. You can't go wrong with it. Swords to Plowshare. Exile target creature, its controller gains life equal to its power. I put that in over Path to Exile because Path to Exile just screws me. Every time I've played Path to Exile, it just screws me. And it's really irritating. Return to Dust. Remove target artifact or enchantment from the game, and if I played it during my turn, I can remove another one. Then we have the one draw spell in the deck, which is Preordain. Scry 2 and draw a card. Eerie Interlude. On the fence about this card. I mean, it helps with a couple things, like, obviously Breya, it works really well, and then I have Shroom and things like that, obviously, but I don't know. I don't know if it deserves a spot. Then you have Obsidat's Aid, return a permanent from your graveyard to the battlefield. Beacon of Unrest, return an artifact or put an artifact or creature from a graveyard onto the battlefield under my control, and then I shuffle it into my library. Open the vaults, return all artifact and enchantment cards from all graveyards to the battlefield under their owner's control. I will most of the time come ahead on this. And then we get to the tutors. We have Enlightened Tutor, search for an artifact or enchantment, reveal it, shuffle my library and put it on top. Demonic Tutor, search for a card, put it in my hand, shuffle. Diabolic Tutor, this is a foil Russian, so it's pretty much just the same thing as Demonic Tutor, except it costs 4. And then we have a small counter package. We have Counterspell, obviously. Stoic Rebuttal, because it pretty much turns into a Counterspell almost immediately. Hinder, this doesn't work with commanders anymore, which is really sad, but it's still really good. Dissipate, Eldrazi. Void Shatter, Eldrazi. And then we move on to the meat and potatoes of the deck, which is artifacts. So we have Izzet Signet, Boros Signet, Rakdos Signet, Dimir Signet, Orzhov Signet. Then we have Commander Sphere, Darksteel Ingot, Hedron Archive, Gilded Lotus, and Blinkmoth Urn. So those are all like the mana rocks, I guess you can call them. And then we move on. So these next 3 cards, I believe, are some of the best cards to use with Breya. You just abuse them. So Mycosynth Wellspring and Ichor Wellspring. Mycosynth Wellspring, when it enters the battlefield or is put into the graveyard from the battlefield, I can search for a basic land, reveal it, and put it into my hand, then shuffle my library. Then Ichor Wellspring says whenever it's put into the battlefield or when it's put into the graveyard, I can draw a card. So those cards are just ridiculous to abuse with Breya, and it just will win you the game sometimes by themselves, because you just get the advantage and draw what you need and win. Then you have Spine of Ishsa. Sure, it costs 7, but it comes into play and destroys a permanent, and then when it's put into the graveyard from the battlefield, return it to its owner's hand. So, comes into play, blows something up, hits the you sack it with Breya, hits the graveyard, comes back to your hand. Just an infinite loop of getting rid of anything that you want to get rid of. Then we have a couple equipment. We have Skull Clamp, the draw cards, Cranial Plating. Oh, excuse me. It's just makes Breya ridiculous. Swiftfoot Boots, so they don't remove Breya. Trading Post is a ridiculously good card in Commander. So you can pay 1, tap it, discard a card to gain 4 life. You can pay 1 life, tap it, pay 1 life, tap it, create a 0/1 goat creature token. You can pay 1, sacrifice a creature, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. You can pay 1, tap it, sacrifice an artifact to draw a card. So it just gives you so many options, and you can make goats. Who doesn't want to make goats? I mean, look at this guy. Look at him. He's incredible. Then Navinral's Disc, what we talked about earlier with the Soul of New Phyrexia. Destroy all artifacts, creatures, and enchantments, and Soul of New Phyrexia makes all your stuff indestructible. So basically, you just blow everybody else out. And then Conjurer's Closet is the last card. I left this card to last because this is one of the best cards in the deck that goes with Breya so well. So at the beginning of your end step, you may exile a creature card and return it to the battlefield under your control. So, every turn, at the end, I move to my end step, blink, 2 Thopters. Move to my end step, blink, 2 Thopters. Move to my end step, blink, 2 Thopters. So it gives you an activation every single turn, as long as you have 2 mana open. My glare on that's really bad. So yeah, that's my Breya Etherium Shaper EDH deck. It's again, it's one of my favorite decks. Obviously behind Tribal Birds, because Tribal Bird is the best deck that I have. Just kidding. Surprisingly enough, it wins a lot of games. Especially multiplayer games where everybody's like, oh, he's just playing birds. But that's not what we're here about. We're here about Breya. And she's a lot of fun. The mana base is kind of expensive to work with when you have a 4-color deck. It's not as bad as 5-color, obviously. I'm still missing a lot of lands for this deck because I don't have them, or they're occupied in another deck. But what I have right now works just fine. You don't even need the shock lands. you can just put other things in there, and you'll move a little bit slower, but you don't lose much effectiveness. It's Commander. It's not a super competitive format. It's pretty much just have fun. You play this format to have fun, and I hope that you guys have fun watching my videos, because I have fun making them. And Commander is my favorite game format. So thank you so much for watching, guys. If you are new to the channel, if you could subscribe, that would be great. It really helps me out. Like this video if you enjoyed it, and I'll see you next time.